First of all, can we just do a little celebration before we even get started with our interview? Because this book that I'm holding in my hand, You're Not Too Late, in a hurry up world, trusting God's timing in a hurry up world, just launched on April 1st. And I started laughing when I thought about that because on a day of trickery, you were not fooling around. Like you released a strong message out into the world. You were not fooling around. So,
Oh,
and
friend,
I am so, yes, I'm so thankful for this.
I'm so excited to be here, Brandy. This is going to be awesome. I've been looking forward to our conversation. And yeah, when my publisher told me that 4/1 would be the pub date, that's the industry term, I just had to chuckle because there has been as with any message or anything God calls us to do that feels significant, there's also spiritual warfare that comes alongside that. And it was almost this like, but kind of
Yep.
like little giggle from the Lord that He gave me when I found out that was the date, because that was certainly the case with this hard fought for message. So I'm just
Right.
excited about our conversation.
Yes. It was kind of like a whoop, there it is
Yeah, exactly.
on April 1st, right? So, but I'm just thankful for your heart for helping women in this and to embrace God's timeline and that it's never
Yeah.
too late. So many of us, I think your message right now is just I believe it's a perfect timing. Obviously, we know
Mm,
that God's timing is perfect, but I truly believe that right now is the time for your message to be released in the world. And I am thankful to be able to come alongside you and help
mm,
you carry this message to the hands and the hearts that need it so
mm.
desperately right now to know that they're not too late and they can stop questioning, right? And start
Yeah.
trusting. Yeah.
Amen.
And yeah, exactly. And also, I just haven't even said this yet, but I had to because we've talked quite a while on social media, but we have never met. So now
I
we
know.
officially
This
get
is
to
so
meet
fun.
today, right? In air quotes, I get to meet you today, and I'm so excited
Yes.
because I'm going to tell you. I have deep love for a Tennessee gal, right? I'm
Oh,
from
I know.
Tennessee. So,
I
you know,
love that about you.
my blood bleeds orange, girl. So I
Oh,
am a Tennessee
same.
gal. Yeah. What about, though, have y'all been experiencing where you are in East Tennessee? Any of the bad weather, the storms that have been
A
coming
little
through?
bit. Man, our friends in Nashville have had it way worse than us, I feel like.
Yeah.
So, as far as where we are in the state, we've been very fortunate in the last couple of weeks. But I feel like this spring has brought some of the wildest weather that I think Tennessee has seen in a long time. When my husband and I first got married, we were in Mississippi for a few years.
Uh-huh.
So, we became like accustomed to the wild weather that is like the deep, deep South. But
Right.
I think since we've moved back, this is the craziest that I've seen.
Yeah. I've been following it and watching along. Some of my family's been
Yeah.
impacted by it, and it just
Oh,
keeps coming
friend.
in waves.
Yeah,
We're
I know.
actually, yeah, we're coming to Tennessee next week, and I just keep watching the weather, and I'm like, hey, I need it to slow down a bit so I can enjoy time
Yeah.
back home. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I am literally, I don't know if you can even see, like if you can tell that I cannot stop smiling just to even get
You're like
started with this
glowing.
interview. Yes, I am so excited because like I said, this is literally one of the most important messages that I believe for such a time as this that women need that we need to hold on to.
Yeah.
So many women are longing. But not
Yeah.
only are they longing, they are stuck in comparison. Not
Yeah.
only are they stuck in comparison, but they're looking around and thinking everything they want in their life is happening for everyone else, right?
Totally.
And it's just like there is like a blanket of burnout. Wouldn't you like you
Hmm.
just feel like this big heavy weight on women right now? And it's just like I'm ready for the ground to break open and just to release this sound and this message that God is putting out in the
Mm,
atmosphere that you are not too late. My
mm,
time is perfect for you. And
yeah.
that we don't have to look at what everyone else is doing, right? What He has
Yeah.
for us, we're never going to miss it. And one of my most memorable quotes in your book, and I want to read this in You're Not Too Late, is that this book is for the hopefuls. And you don't know this, you have no idea about this about me, I'm sure, but I recently started a Substack and God gave me Graceful Musings. And it was for the wildly hopefuls. It's for the wildly hopeful ones who are holding on to this
Mm,
wild expectancy and wild hope, even in wilderness places,
yeah.
before they see the promise of God. And so when I read this and you said it was for the wildly hopefuls and that the ones that are ready to put up their jersey. Like that's just
Yeah.
been burning in my spirit. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that this morning and the season of waiting and talking about what it looks like when you wonder if the
Mhm.
season's ever going to end. If the
Yeah.
season of waiting is ever going to end. And you also say, I've heard you say that hope is a prerequisite for longing. And
Yeah.
that's what I want us to get started with this on this interview this
I
morning
would
is
love to.
talking
Yeah.
about longing. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that you pulled that one statement because Brandy, like a little how the sausage was made moment as a writer, I would come back to that statement that I make in the introduction. I would say once a week as I
Yeah.
was writing this book. And the full statement, I might miss a phrase, but it says, "This is for the hopefuls, the almost but not yets, the crushed
Yes.
in defeat, the stunned by a lack of progress, and the weary woman ready to hang up her jersey." And I would just reread that and think about all of the seasons where I felt stunned by a lack of progress. Like, God,
Right.
where are you? Or I was ready to hang up my jersey. Like, God, you put this desire in my heart. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know how you're going to come through or provide or in what way this will bring you the most glory because it doesn't feel good to me today.
Right.
Right? All of those things that bubble up in our hearts. And so, yeah, I love that you brought up that hope as the prerequisite of longing piece as well, because we live in the midst of such a broken world today,
Yes.
right? We are
Yes.
kind of,
Yes.
as I say in the book, living between two Edens. It is not
Hmm.
as it was in the garden as God created it in perfect fellowship and communion with Him.
No.
That was severed because of sin.
Right.
Jesus came, made a way to restore our relationship with God, and we live in this meanwhile of awaiting His return and living in the middle of a broken world. And so, as we do that, we experience longing. We experience different types of longing. I talk about in the book two kind of main categories. There's vocational longing. I want to grow in my
Right.
career. I want to start a business. I want to get involved with this organization. And then there's relational longing, maybe the desire to have kids or grandkids, to restore a relationship, to get married, whatever it is. And I think, Brandy, in our generation, more than ever before, our longing and lack thereof of that thing that we desire is just so center stage in our hearts
Right.
because all day long we're scrolling on our phones and watching people's highlight reels and
Yes.
living the life that we would maybe hope to have in some way, form, or fashion.
Right.
And I don't think our hearts were meant to carry what we're carrying right
Right.
now.
All that
And
that we're consuming, right? Over
yes,
and over.
yes,
Yeah.
that's right. And so hope's prerequisite is longing. I want to come back to that. We wouldn't have cause to hope if we weren't longing for something, right?
Hmm.
Like the whole point of hope is that
Hmm.
we're looking forward to a future reality that doesn't exist maybe today. And the ultimate fulfilling of our longing, our ultimate view of hope is our hope in Christ and our hope
Right.
for ultimate redemption when He comes back and restores all things. And that's going to be awesome one day. But I think you and I are sitting here today wrestling with, like, well, what do I do in the meanwhile? What do I do with these longings in my heart? And how
Right.
do I trust God in them? And so my hope and my prayer is to kind of surface, here are the things that come up in our hearts when we experience longing, and not that we won't ever experience something becoming an idol in our hearts and rising up to that plate. We can talk about that more in a minute. Or
Right.
fear kind of bubbling up in us as we take a really scary first step, or doubt, like, God, how are you ever going to show up? We'll experience that this side of heaven.
Yeah.
But my hope is to have the conversation of what do we do with those things
Right.
as we navigate a broken world.
Because that's the thing is we all are experiencing them, but I don't think
Mhm.
there is enough chat around what do we do in it? So
Yeah.
many people want to wear a mask and, pretend like everything is okay, right? And because we
Yeah.
can look around, because we live in such a social media world, I love social media. I use social media as an extension of ministry. You do. A
Totally.
lot of us do. However, there is also a component of that into where we can get stuck in our lack, and we can look around
Yeah.
at what we don't have, and then we start thinking and focusing on where we're missing out, right? And so
Yeah.
I don't think we talk enough about, I'm experiencing these feelings of anxiety. I have an anxious heart. I have a restless
Mm,
mind. I can't put this down. I'm holding on to expectancy and wild hope, but I'm experiencing fear and longing, and then we don't want to talk about it because everybody else appears to have it all together, right?
yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
what do we do with that? Because we don't want to promise a false hope, right? The gospel
Yeah.
stands on its own.
That's right.
It stands on its own, but we don't want to offer this prosperity and this false hope of, well, I can promise you this, if you follow Jesus, if you start being obedient, or if you're faithful to his word. Absolutely not. We are going to experience trouble, right?
Yeah.
We are
Yeah.
going to experience longing. We are going to find ourselves in the middle of these situations. And that's what I love about your book, You're Not Too Late, because you give practical wisdom
Mm,
and tips in how to follow through and how to navigate through these
yeah.
seasons in a truthful, honest, vulnerable, and really raw way.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you bring that up, Brandy, because I think so many times we scroll on our phones or ask our friend about, what's going on in their life. And maybe they're at a life stage in our perception, one step ahead of us. And so we hear them process that. And then we feel as if there's no part of their life where longing has touched it.
Right.
Right? And that's such a lie, right? Like,
Yes.
I look back and examine over my life, and I tell a lot of these stories in the book of, I was single and desired marriage, and God provided in that way, and the second he did, another longing popped up in my heart, right?
Right.
And so the piece of this that we have to kind of grapple with is longing this side of eternity leads to more longing, right? One day,
Right.
all of our longings, all of our hopes will be met in him, and that's going to be an awesome day. And I can't wait for that. But in the middle of where we
Right.
are right now, we will always experience longing and brokenness. And so if
Yes.
that's true, then it's also true for the friend who when we look to the right or to the left and we're comparing our lives to them. I think the great news is we're all in good company. We're all
Right.
experiencing this
Yes.
longing. And that does a lot for my heart to go, oh, wait, my friend who has 2 kids and I'm desiring to become a mom, she has longing too. She's
Right.
navigating this in maybe a different way. It might look
Right.
different, but she's not immune from it. I say in the book that longing is no respecter of persons, right? We all
Absolutely not. Yes.
navigate it. And so I think knowing that can help our hearts a little bit when it bubbles up, but there's also a lot of practical things we can do that can help, which I'm sure we'll get into. But um yeah, I think recognizing that in us and then really searching our hearts to go, okay, what is creeping up in me as I experience this longing really helps. I point us back a lot in the book to a passage in Psalm 139. I call it the Search Me God prayer.
Yeah.
It's verses 23 and 24. And the psalmist says, search my heart, O God, try me and know my thoughts. And if there be a grievous way in me, lead me in the way everlasting. And I kind of use that as a prayer prompt for me.
Hmm. Yeah.
Often I
Yeah.
will just say, God, search my heart. Show me where how I'm thinking about this differs from your perspective. And would you grant me that perspective that I don't have today? Because you are the infinite one. You are the all knowing one. I am very finite. I'm trying to understand how you're at work in this
Right.
situation where I don't know how the story's going to end. And help me see your vantage point. Show me where I'm thinking about this in a different way than you are, and reveal to me how I can live this out in a way that brings you the most honor and glory. And so those 2 verses have been such a helpful place for me to land in the middle of
Yeah.
my longing, as I just seek to trust him more.
Yeah. And it is so important, I think, and I wonder if that's a step that we often miss because we have to be looking outwardly. Something's just wrong, right? Something's
Mm,
wrong out in everything else. But when we take that moment to pause and say, God, search
yeah,
my heart and know me and show me my inward parts, like what is in me that may not be of you.
yeah,
Because once he shows us what is in us that is not of him, then we can actually face the things that are going on that are bringing us such despair and
yeah,
grief. And I also wonder sometimes in my own life, I'll just say this, I'll preface this
yeah,
with this. I look around and I'll be scrolling on social media. I'm in seminary school right now. Some days I just need a moment to just kind of just breathe. And I'll
yes.
look, but then I find myself and I'll be scrolling and I'll see all of these beautiful things. People are going on trips, right? And
Mm,
people are decorating these beautiful homes and they have these beautiful families, and it you start looking and it's like you think everything in your world is just bad. You know what I mean? It's just like it's
yeah,
not good anymore. And sometimes I literally, Rebecca, have to shake myself and be like, girl, it is not that bad. You know what I mean?
that's
Like,
right.
stop
Yes.
this, get out of this rut, get out of this pit. I don't know where that came from, but the devil is a liar and he has got to go, right? And because it is so easy to
Yeah,
once we start focusing and once we have that mindset and start focusing on the negative, I mean, we can
yeah,
go in a very downward spiral, and the enemy of our souls would love nothing more if we
yeah,
would continue on that spiral, right?
totally.
And right now, he is being shook because so many of us women are coming together and there is this message of hope. There
Yeah,
is this message coming out of you're not too late. There is this message coming out of his timing is perfect. Hold on, friend. Hold on to hope. If it's
yeah,
not good, he's not done. And it's like
yeah,
so many voices are crying out in the wilderness right now, and it's like us women are finally like, okay, I see that other women are struggling. These women
yeah,
that I've been looking at and come alongside them, and it's easy right now. I see Rebecca George today, an author of this beautiful book, right? And I see Rebecca George that has a podcast and she's speaking on platforms and she houses retreats and she has devotionals and she does all these mighty things, and I can come alongside you today and see all these beautiful things in your life. But what happened and what was going on in Rebecca's life before this happened, right? What did this cost you to get
yeah.
here? And that's the price that so many of us don't get to see, and we judge your life from where it is now
100%.
and do not think
100%.
anything about the fire that you had to
Yeah.
walk through to get here, and the refining and the sanctification that it took to get here, to be able to hold your head up and say, I'm trusting your timing in this hurry up, Lord
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Right?
I have not told a lot of this on many podcasts that I've done, which I love when something like comes up that you've not talked about a lot. So this is really fun. But to give everybody a glimpse into that, Brandy, and I think that's really important because whether you're a writer or not, whether you relate to like the work that we do or your life looks totally different,
Right.
in some way you have someone that you look up to that you would say like, hey, I aspire to do X, Y, or Z like this person does, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
um and so I can look back over the last couple of years of my life and see God's hand absolutely all over this message. I see it everywhere in conversations I have with women.
Hmm.
It's marked my own life. It's a struggle that I have wrestled with for years and years and years. Brandy, over the last 6 years or so, my husband and I got married in 2019. Um, we got married right before the pandemic, which was awesome, sweet new season of newlywed life. But at the same time, I married a lead pastor and jumped into the deep end of ministry 10 months before a pandemic in
Oh,
a town of
wow.
12,000 people.
Oh,
We were
wow.
in a really
Yeah.
small town in the deep South. So that was a challenging season. It was also the season when God opened a lot of doors for writing and speaking. So in hindsight, I could see God stripped away a lot of what brought me comfort and familiarity in order to open up doors for me to do ministry that I dreamed about and longed
Right.
for a decade probably. And so that's an interesting like give and take in
Hmm.
different seasons. As we come in and out of different seasons, God will bless us with something while also maybe we're experiencing um, something on in another domain of our lives, like relationships or whatever, where it feels like he's uprooting us while also opening a door over here. She's just
Yeah.
always working in our lives and drawing us closer to him and into a deeper dependence on him, which was true in that season and now in my life for sure. But I remember when God just began opening my eyes to this idea of longing. At first, I thought this would be a book on singleness. Like, I got
Uh-huh.
married later in my 20s. I was a bridesmaid 12 times before I married my husband. So I just have a lot to say about singleness and I have a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
thoughts on that season of life. But the more I looked around and the more I searched my own heart, it was like, oh no, this is bigger. This is bigger, way bigger than that.
It's
Because,
bigger than the dresses. It's bigger than
yes,
how many times I've worn them, right?
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is in all of us. I see this in, now that I'm in my 30s and my friends are having kids, all of their moms are experiencing the desire to become a grandparent,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
and the longing of that looks different than the longing to have kids or the longing to be married, etc. And so I remember sitting down with my editor a couple years ago and I just looked at her and she was, we were wanting to have the conversation of like what maybe is book 2. And I said, I don't know that I will perfectly articulate this to you right now, but every woman I know feels too late for her life, including me.
Yes.
And I have
Amen.
longings in my heart that like I don't know how God's going to show up. But I also know that I don't wanna miss him in the middle
Right.
of this, and I feel like I have in the past where I've been
Yeah.
so hyper fixated on what I thought he might do or how he might show up or how the story might end, that I just missed his faithfulness and his blessing where I was today, and I don't wanna do that anymore.
Right.
And so I don't know that this is a book I would write at all from a place of, like, having arrived, but
Mhm.
I just wanna I wanna I want to learn about that. I want to talk to God about that. And so that led to, honestly, Brandy, probably one of the hardest fought things for like that God has ever asked me to do. I
Mhm.
mean, I even last week, and I could, I'm going to like have some, uh, restraint here because I could talk about this for a long time. But last week was launch week.
Mhm.
And the day before the book came out, one of my best friends had flown in to help me with my party last weekend. And in one day, the day before the book came out, her mom died.
Uh,
A sweet
oh
baby in
my
our church
gosh.
had to have a really serious surgery that, praise God, we're on the other side of, and it went well, but that was heavy on my heart. I got a flat tire. It was rainy all day. Like everywhere we went to run errands and do all the book launch week things, it was just inconvenient, which just made me angsty, right?
Right.
And we got to the end of the day, and I sat down and I looked at my husband and I looked at my friend and I was like, man, the enemy does not want this book to
Right.
prosper, to be successful, for like God to be glorified through it. And so I do think that's a testament originally to what you were saying of,
Yeah.
man, there is this tide turning of women saying, like, wait, our hearts weren't meant for all this that we're carrying. And like, how
Right.
do we see this rightly? And the enemy is going to want no part of that, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. And, the thing is, and I say this quite often, but for there to ever be a suddenly moment, for there to be an April 1st launch date for this book to come out, for this book to be out in the world, for this to be in the hands and hearts of the women that need it, there was a waiting season, right?
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
just have a suddenly moment of God. There is a waiting that
Yeah.
takes place, and it's in the waiting where we wrestle and we
Yeah.
get distracted and frustrated, but the waiting and the wrestling can be holy. The
Yes.
hard can be sacred and holy. And I think so often we focus on what's next what's coming up next, right? I know in your book you talk about having a hurry up personality, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think so many of us, especially women, and in the society and culture we live in right now, it's such a fast, like, gotta have it right now. I want everything I want. I can
Totally.
order my Amazon package. I can get it in the mail today. I want my groceries delivered right now. I don't want to have
Yes.
to wait in the line at Publix. I don't want to have to wait for the checkout. We want everything right now. And because of our hurry up personalities in a God that takes time,
Yeah.
we start seeing where everything kind of falls apart, right? Where the threads start to
Mm-hmm.
unravel. And we start thinking, well, when I get my car paid off, then I'll be
Mm.
happy. Or when I get this wallpaper in my bedroom, I'll
Yeah.
be happy. Or once I finish this book, this'll be it, God. Like, I'll know I've made it. Like, every one of us has something that we're holding on to with our hurry up personalities, that we're trying to rush ahead of the pace of God's grace, that
Yeah.
we're missing what He's doing and the life that we have that's so beautiful to live right here and right now.
Yeah.
He wastes nothing in our time.
Yeah.
He wastes nothing in our lives. And we get so focused on what's next that
Hmm.
it's hard for us to see that. And then we're full of anxiety and we
Yeah.
don't know where to turn. There are so many women. I would dare to say, I know this has been me, and I would dare to say that this has been our friends that are listening to us today, that we lay on the floor in our bathrooms and cry behind closed doors. And we stand up and we open that door and we have this mask on, right? I'm fine.
Yeah.
Everything's fine. But in reality, we're hurrying up just to wait.
Yeah.
And we are literally falling apart on the inside. The thread's unraveling. It's like this beautiful tapestry is unwoven. And where do we go? Where do we
Yeah.
go from that moment? How do we understand that life in the messy middle, that that's a beautiful place too, that there is
Yeah.
abundant grace and joy here, and that we can have peace in the chaos, and that we can have joy in wilderness places. Like,
Totally.
we
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
get to those moments because these moments are real. These
Yeah.
moments are raw, and they're never going to go away on this side of glory, right?
No.
Once
No.
we get to one spot, something's going to come ahead. And I know that kind of, I don't want to sound gloom and doom, but it's just the reality
No,
of
it's just a
life.
reality. Yeah, that's so important. I think that you brought that up. And I was actually talking with a friend later last week. She'd gotten the book in the mail. She's a licensed therapist, like vocationally, that's what she does.
Hmm.
And she said, I looked at your table of contents and she said, I'm so excited about this book. And like this one, her perspective means a lot to me, but two, as a counselor, it really was such an encouragement to my heart because she said I was reading through the table of contents and I got to the chapter about resentment
Yeah.
and it just stopped me dead in my tracks because she said I have really personally in my own life and then in the lives of my clients been seeing this theme of resentment, and I think if
Yes.
I get to the root of it, what's happened is in our sweet southern culture, we're really good about, as you said, like putting on the shiny happy like balloons and butterflies face
Yeah.
and not dealing with the raw emotion of my friend got pregnant when I was struggling with infertility, or my friend got married while I sat in a really long season of
Yeah.
singleness and I showed up at her wedding with joy, but I never processed what that did to my heart. We
That's
do that
right.
over and over and over and over and over again for years on end.
Hmm.
And then we wonder why our hearts are bitter. We wonder
Right.
why our hearts are filled with this resentment and we can't see the hand of God
That's
in
right.
our current season. And so I love that she pointed that chapter out because it was one that I just felt so strongly. It was a topic I felt so strongly we needed to talk about because I think sometimes we put that same shiny, happy, I'm going to show up with a smile principle onto
Hmm.
our relationship with God,
Yeah.
right? As if we can't go to Him and say, you know what, Lord, that baby shower was really hard for me. on
Right.
Saturday. And you know my heart. Like you know the inner workings of my heart. You know how many numbers of hair there are on my head. Like you know the trueness of that better than even I do. And so I'm asking that you would just grant me joy where that doesn't exist. I know that you see that longing in my heart, and I'm
Mhm.
asking that you would give me your perspective on why that's still a longing for me. Like
Right.
if we're unwilling to deal with it, resentment is what happens in us.
Mhm.
And I think that does nothing but blind us to the hand of God. And
Right.
I have just been so challenged to kind of halt that sweet Southern show up with a smile part of me that I
Right.
love that I grew up in Southern culture, but I think um, it's helpful for us to challenge ourselves to remember that like we can be honest with the Lord about how we
Right.
feel, whether
Right.
that's our anxious thoughts, our anger over a situation, whatever bubbles up in us when somebody asks us, hey, when are you having kids? Or hey, are
Mhm.
you dating anybody? Or hey, how's that job going? And our hearts don't know what to do with that because it's bumping up against our longing. Rather than getting offended, getting angry, getting so bent out of shape that we're just ruminating over, the friend of our great aunt who asked us when we were having kids and we let that ruin our day, we can choose to leave that encounter and go, huh, I wasn't expecting that question, or I wasn't
Right.
expecting that to come up in my heart. I need to go talk to a trusted mentor about that. I need to go to the Lord about that, and I need to deal with it.
And deal with it.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
yeah, otherwise, I'm just continuing to build that resentment muscle. And I meant to say this earlier, Brandy, but I think this is important. I love the way that God wired our brains
Yeah.
and the way that God made our brains. 95% of what we think is repetitive.
Mhm. Mhm.
And God actually designed our brains such that like we form these neural pathways that like get stronger the more we think about something in a certain way. And I love that we have a choice in that,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
not this is not me throwing toxic positivity at this conversation because that's the last thing I want to do.
Right.
But what I am challenging us to do is if we continue to choose resentment, doubt, comparison in every one of those opportunities where we bump up against our longing, that's just what we're going to continue doing next time.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas if we go, you know what, God, I feel a lot of doubt in this, but like
Mhm.
you are the God of hope. You are, your hand is at work in this. Help me see that. If we wrestle with that, our muscle memory to do that next time will get a little bit stronger.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's that we'll never, again, as we've said, we'll never experience longing, but we'll better know the next step to take when we do, you
When
know?
we do. Yeah. Yeah, I know that I have been guilty. I'm a fixer, right? And
Yeah.
I say all the time, I am a recovering overthinker and I am a fixer. And I
Yeah.
am truly praying into that because the Lord never asked me to fix anyone. It's not my responsibility to fix anyone. I'm to be a listening ear, right? And just to
Yeah.
love you well and serve you, but I can't fix you. And I get so caught up, I can honey and baby you to death and bless your heart, right?
Yeah.
And hide our crazy. We have just been trained to hide our own crazy. And it just makes me think, as you've been talking, it's almost like a full circle moment back to search me and know me, oh God. If
Yeah.
we can't get real with ourselves about what we're experiencing and what we're facing and how we're dealing with what's going on in our lives, if we're not willing to
Yeah.
say, God, this is hurting me. I don't know what to do with this. I don't know how to move forward. I feel stuck. I can't breathe. Whatever it may be, we have to get real with ourselves and get very vulnerable to be truthful with Him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we try to package everything up and tie it up in this neat, tidy bow.
Totally.
This bow because we're women, right? We've got this. I've got this. I can handle
Yeah.
this, and really we can't. And it's okay to not be okay. That's
Yeah.
the one thing that I want to shout from the rooftops to every single friend that I know is sis, it is okay to not be okay. Your weakness is not, it doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're strong. It means that you can look at God and you can hold on to the hem of his garment and say, I need your strength in this. I need
Yeah.
you to help me carry through. I can't go to another wedding feeling this way. I can't
Yeah.
go to another baby shower feeling this way. I can't go into another job interview feeling this way. I can't go on another date or another dating website. I can't look at my children or my parents. There are so many things that as women that we're just holding on to and
Mm,
harboring that are building up this resentment. And it's not
yeah.
only resentment for each other, we're resenting ourselves. And
Sure.
so not only now I resent you because I can't deal with my own trauma, right? I just want to hide my crazy. I want to put all my skeletons in the closet. Let's lock the door. But really, we've got a moment saying, let these dry bones come back to life, right? Like,
Yeah.
we don't have to hide any longer.
Yeah.
God is calling us forward, and we can truly walk in this. And He's telling us, you haven't missed it. You're
Yeah.
not too late. I know what culture, I know what the world's telling you. I know you've been longing. I know you're experiencing fear because that's a whole nother component of this
Mhm.
longing and anxiety is the fear, right? That now has
Mhm.
come in. So we're holding on to fear. We're holding on to resentment. We're resenting ourselves, each other. And
Yeah.
honestly, when we don't deal with these emotions and process them through the truth of the word, we're resenting him.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
he's telling us it's okay for you to tell me. And I know this is so counterculture. And I know that it's probably not what many Christians think, but it is okay for us to bring that to God and say, God, I'm upset. I
Yeah.
am just not okay.
Yeah. And
And
you know what
he's
else?
waiting for that.
And you know what else is countercultural? And I don't think it I mean, I would dare to be so bold to say I don't think it should be countercultural for us as followers of Christ. But, like, you don't have what it takes apart from his power. You don't
Right.
have what it takes apart from his
Right.
strength, from his perspective, his wisdom. James 1 tells us he will grant us wisdom liberally without reproach when we ask him for it.
That is
Like,
right.
I'm forever saying, "God, like, I don't know what you're hoping to do in this situation. I don't today understand how this is the way in which you're choosing to write the story or end the story or that this brings you the most glory. One day I'll get that. Praise
Yeah.
God. Like that's the
Yeah.
good news. One day
Right.
we will understand all the ways that we maybe did see his hand and praise God for that this side of heaven and he let us peek behind the curtain and see how he was at work. We'll then understand the ways that didn't make sense to us this side of heaven. And then Brandy, I think something we don't talk about a lot is I think we forget that so many times across each day of our lives, God is orchestrating things, protecting us from things, writing in different parts of our stories that we will never know.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like
Yeah.
last week when I got a flat tire, was God protecting me from getting in a car wreck somewhere? Probably. I don't know.
Probably. Yeah. He
Maybe,
could have been.
you know,
Absolutely.
and even okay, even last week, you and I were supposed to record this conversation
Right.
like a few days ago and nothing about our technology was working.
Right.
I have to believe that and I said this to you, we weren't supposed to have the conversation last Thursday.
Right.
And there was a reason
Right.
why it didn't work. And so I think that's a perspective shift for us
Mm-hmm.
in Western Christianity, but it shouldn't be. Right? Like
Right.
we that's where I want to challenge us to like point us back to the truth of like God is always at work. He is sitting on his throne from a vantage point we can't see. And so it won't always make sense to us and that's okay. It's not for us to necessarily understand and figure out and fix as
Yeah.
you were talking about a moment ago, fellow
Yeah.
fixer over here. Um but man, that perspective shift is so important, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, and, when we look, it's like we can't see. We can't see his hand, right, in the wilderness. We can't see his hand in the dry places. We can't see his hand when we're in the fire.
Yeah.
but he brings us through every time. And
Yeah.
one of the biggest things that I think for us that we have to grasp and truly get down on the inside of us is it's not always going to look like we expected.
Ugh,
He
yeah.
answers us, right? But it's
Yeah.
not always going to look like I planned or like I wanted it to. And so then when it happens differently, we start thinking
Mhm.
God didn't show up, right?
Yeah.
But that's not
Yeah.
the case. He was there. He never left, right? It wasn't like he
Mhm.
was holding out on us or withholding any good thing from us. He wasn't punishing us. But sometimes it just turns out different than what we expected. And
Yeah.
we can still hold on to hope in that and
Yeah.
trust him in that.
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah, and I think that's the case so many times in our lives,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, if we were to all look back over how God provided in our relational longings and our vocational longings, it's probably not at all how we would have written the story, which is so interesting to like consider and think about.
Mhm.
But man, um, it's those times where it didn't work out the way I thought, or I had to wait longer than I would have chosen, or God had a totally different plan. It's in those moments for me that He's used to mold me, to refine me.
Yes. Yes.
And were it not for those things, I I don't know. I just think those are some of the greatest teachers in our walk with Christ, but
Absolutely.
because we have nowhere else to turn but
Right.
total and complete dependence on Him.
Right. And it's when we get to the end of ourselves that we
Yeah,
finally realize that. And it's kind of a shame that we have to get there, you know?
yeah,
If
I
we could
know.
just see all along the plan and that he truly does know the ending from our beginning and that he knows what's best. And
Yeah,
even when it's hard, his plan for us is still good.
yeah.
And he is still
Amen.
good. Our situations don't change who he is. I was reading, and it's so funny. I just picked up your book in chapter 7, your weakness and strength chapter, and it made me think about when you just said that things didn't turn out the way you had planned. I read your story about you and Dustin getting your baby olive trees.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I absolutely love because my husband and I, you talk about your outdoor oasis in there and, kind
Yes.
of sitting outside with your coffee. Well, at our house, my husband and I moved from Nashville to Charleston. And so we sit outside. We have this beautiful deck and we have this big live oak tree. And Rebecca, it's probably like 500 years old. Like it's
Yeah.
literally like it's huge. It's bigger than our
Massive.
house. And it hangs down and all the beautiful
Oh,
Spanish
yeah.
moss and we're working on landscaping the yard and that's a process. We got 6 dogs.
Yeah.
Like we are in the middle of lifing over here trying to renovate this 100-year-old house, let me just tell you. So nothing, we have a bathroom literally ripped out right now. There's just so much going on, so much longing in our
Yeah.
lives. But I truly related to that because he and I have bought some lavender. There's just so many things that we've bought.
Oh,
Some
I
of them
love
are
that.
like taking
Yeah.
root and they're beautiful, but some of them are not. And so
Yes.
when I read that story about your baby olive trees and you guys just sitting there drinking your coffee, like I could see my Dan and I could see us in your
Yes.
story. And I
Yeah.
thought about that. So I wanted to ask you because you brought up something that was very beautiful and relational in chill hours. You
Yeah.
talked about the
Yeah.
chill hours. And so I wanted you to just kind of go into that story a little bit
Sure.
with our strengths and weaknesses.
Sure.
And I wanted for our friends to see just a story to where they can see that it doesn't always turn out like we planned,
Yeah,
but God's
totally.
beautiful hand in that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love that story. When my husband and I got married in 2019, as we talked about a few minutes ago, we went to Israel the year that we got married, which was such a gift. Like, I'll never forget it. I hope I get to go back. If you have the desire to go, do
Girl,
whatever
I
you
have got to
can
go
to make
to
it happen.
yes. Yes.
It changed the way I will forever read scripture. Anytime I read about somewhere where I've been, you can just close your eyes and it's like scripture goes from black and white to technicolor when you've like stood in the place, which
Oh
is
yeah.
just so amazing. And so everywhere we went, there were olive trees. Like when we went to Bethlehem, we went to the place where they like carve all the beautiful statues that you can buy. And we went to Jerusalem and the Garden of Gethsemane, and there's olive trees everywhere. So it was just this theme of the trip. And I could see my husband's wheels turning, and he did some researching while we were there, and then after we got home to see, is there does there exist a species of olive tree that could grow in South Mississippi where we lived at the time, super hot, humid climate.
Right. Yeah.
And after a lot of research, he found this one species of olive tree called the Arbequina. And as he was doing that research, he discovered this term that people use when they talk about olive trees, and it's called chill hours, as you mentioned a moment ago. And basically, the whole point of measuring chill hours is every olive tree, and I guess a lot of plants do this, but particular to olive trees, for the sake of the example, every olive tree needs a certain number of hours below a certain temperature in the winter in order to bear fruit. Okay.
Hmm.
So, like, if it gets too many chill hours, it won't produce fruit. But also, if it doesn't get enough, it won't produce fruit.
Hmm.
And so I thought that was so interesting when he was doing his research. But then we got our little baby olive trees. We planted one in the backyard. Over the course of the next couple of years, it leafed out, and I think it's still there. We don't live in that house anymore, but I hope the next person that's living there is enjoying it. But I remember
Right.
sitting on my back porch one day as I was kind of dreaming about this idea of longing, and you know how we do, like we'll collect stories and thoughts, and that's kind of what I was doing before I even had permission to write the book. But I was sitting there, and if I'm honest, Brandy, struggling still with my own season of longing in a different way. And I looked out at that tree, and I remembered Dustin sharing this idea of chill hours with me. And I just thought, gosh, isn't that my heart? You know, like,
Hmm.
wouldn't I love to not have to withstand the darkness or the cold hours or the challenging season where I don't know how God's going to show up, but my life still produced fruit. Like, I want my life to produce fruit, but I
Right.
don't want the chill hours that cause the fruit to grow, you
Hmm.
know? And I just think that's so important as we think
Hmm.
about how we place our full hope in Him as we navigate longing. We will experience chill hours, that there's no escaping that.
Hmm.
But those are the things that produce fruit in our lives.
Right.
And so we can't deny that, like, there's a tension and a nuance there that, like, no, those chill hours aren't fun, but often they're the very things that refine us more into the likeness of Jesus and produce that spiritual fruit in us. So although we would love to skip them all together, I think they're a really great teacher. So yeah,
Right.
God used that baby olive tree in a lot of ways in my life.
Yeah. Well, and I was thinking while you were talking how often that we would love to just skip over the hard parts, right? If we
Mhm.
could just start the story once when we start something, you think about it and we're just so excited to get ready and everything is just, falling into place or not sometimes, but
Yeah.
it's just the joy of starting, and we have a lot of stamina and we just can't wait, and then as we progress and go along and we get to the middle, right, like
Mm.
kind of where we are in our own lives right now, like literally right in the messy middle, when things get hard, we want to skip that step. We don't want to go through the chill hours.
Yeah.
We want to just get to the good part, like is that a reel or something? Just skip to the
Yes.
good part. That
Yes.
just came to my
Yeah.
head. But we just want to skip to the good part. We just want to get there, but we have to go through those moments. And because we
Yeah.
have to go through those moments, we have to learn how to get real with ourselves, to know
Mhm.
that we're also not the only one struggling, right? We're not the only one going through this thing called life. Everybody has to go through chill hours for their
Yeah.
fruit to be produced.
That's right.
Everyone has to go through the process for their fruit to be produced and for God to be glorified.
Yeah.
And one thing that I wanted to ask you before we close out is, what are some practical tips and steps? I know in your book You're Not Too Late, you have like some devotional type sections in your book.
Mhm.
What are some questions or some tips that you think that we could leave our listeners with, our friends with today, that they would have something tangible to
Yeah.
hold on to carry with them today?
Yeah. Totally. Well, I would first say that throughout this conversation, it's likely that something's come up in your heart. And you know
Oh
what
yeah.
it is. We don't, right? Like, is it the desire to take that next position in corporate America? Is it the desire to have kids? Is whatever it is, whatever your heart has been kind of applying what we're saying to, I want to ask you to just like take note of that
Hmm.
first, right? Like what's coming up in your heart as we talk about this topic of longing. And then a few things I'll say. One, how honest with God have you been with it? Like we've talked a lot about that, but just to like put a bow on it, have you really taken this before the Lord and asked for his perspective, his wisdom, um, and just allowed him to search your heart? I
Hmm.
think that's step one. That's where I'd point you before I point you anywhere else. Second to that, like who knows about it,
Hmm.
right? Like everyone doesn't have to know about your longing, but someone should know everything,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
so, who in your life could be a trusted mentor that you could go to and say, you know what? My husband and I have been trying for kids for years, and I'm so far into resentment with this that like somebody needs to know the state of my heart, and I'm
Hmm.
asking, would you pray with me about this? Would you ask me about it and like be my safe place where I can talk about it? So I think living in community and being willing to be vulnerable to share our struggles with someone
Hmm.
is step one to like kind of pressing back against that resentment that builds in our hearts. And then the other thing I'll say that I think has been practical to me and helpful is those moments where our longing bumps up against a baby shower or a wedding or whatever, and or we're celebrating somebody else's promotion, whatever it is, and we know we're going to struggle when we walk in the
Hmm.
door. We know that that's going to bubble up in our hearts. I think pre-grieving that and dealing with it before the actual occurrence
Yeah.
when we
Yeah.
can. We don't always have that control, but when we know that it's coming, that is helpful. And then also pre-deciding how you want to show up that
Yeah.
day, right?
Yeah.
Like I baby shower example. I want to walk in the door and show up for my friend with joy. God has blessed her with this
Right.
sweet baby. I My longing and her blessing can coexist, right?
Say that again.
Yes.
That is the part right there.
Yes, my longing and her blessing can coexist. And so I'm going to decide. I want to walk in that door with a smile on my face. I want to show up for her and celebrate her well. And you know what? If somebody asks me when me and my husband are having kids, here's what I'm going to say in a way that honors the question and our season of life without over justifying or over explaining,
Right.
and those things that we tend to do when we don't know how to answer a question. You can actually take a little bit of intentionality and just kind of decide how you're going to answer before you're in the situation,
Hmm.
and it'll save you a lot of angst. I actually have a section in the book where I have written like scripts for you as you are like walking into something like this and you don't know what to say. If that's helpful, um, that's another just practical thing that I would
Right.
encourage you to do. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I would say go to the Lord about it, take it to somebody that is
Hmm.
trusted in your life, and then pre decide how you want to show up.
Yeah. That's beautiful, friend. Also, I want to ask you if you could go back to 20-year-old Rebecca.
Mm,
What is something now that you've been in the messy middle, now that you know that God is showing you, not that you have 100% figured it out that you're not too late, but that God is
yeah,
showing you that you're not too late. And now that you're navigating how to live, even in waiting seasons in a hurry up world, what is
yeah,
something that you would go back and tell Rebecca to hold on to carry with her, just to give her some true, through the word, hope of what to
yeah.
carry with her?
Yeah, I love that. I would first say, like, you're not going to arrive when that
Yes.
thing you're longing for happens. And
Amen.
I would love to tell her, like, you're going to get married. Like, you're
Yeah.
going to be in all these weddings. You're going to be a bridesmaid a million times. But, like, God is going to provide. Like, I wish I could just, like, grab her by the shoulders and tell her what God's going to do in her life.
Right.
So, first, I would say that. But then, second to that, I would say, like, chill the heck out.
Right.
You know what
Yes.
I'm saying? Like
Yes. Yeah.
I love being in control. I'm a driver, I'm a doer, I'm a fixer. So actually that place of just total surrender and dependence on the Lord
Hmm.
has been a like hard one like journey with me and
Oh,
God, and I think it is
surrender.
for like all of us, right?
Yeah,
And
surrender
so
is the hardest thing that I
yeah.
honestly think, because we, especially as women, I mean, obviously I can't answer for men, but especially for women, we want to take control. We're the gatekeepers of our home. We
Yes.
want to fix it. That's just how we're
Yes.
wired in our nurturing way. And so, absolutely. With that, so that just that I can just grab onto for myself. So,
Yeah, totally. Well, he is so kind to us and he's so faithful. We just have to trust
yes.
him in the meanwhile.
Yes. Oh Lord. Amen. Like, you just made me want to go to church right here at the end. Where can our friends find your book? How
Yeah,
can they get their hands on a copy of your book?
totally. So you can grab it anywhere you like to buy books, Amazon, Christian Book, Barnes and Noble, all the places. I'm the most active over on Instagram. My handle is Rebecca George Author, and I would love to connect with you there.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for being with us, Rebecca. I truly believe that your message in this book is warranted. Not
Mm,
only warranted, I think it is truly belongs in the world right now for such a
thank you,
time as this.
friend.
I don't just say that because you're with me on the podcast today. I think this is a message that so many women truly need to
Mm,
hold on to and truly carry with them in their heart, that they're not too late. They
yeah,
haven't missed it. We have not missed what God has for us, and that it is okay to be truthful with
yeah.
him, so that
Amen.
we can truly start healing in our longing. Right. And so I'm just
Amen.
so thankful for this message for such a time as this. And I'm just thankful that you were with us today and gave us some of your wisdom. And I truly cannot wait to see how this book changes lives. We'll have to
Mm.
do a part two on the podcast so that we can actually give some testimonies. Once you
Oh, I
start
would love
getting
that.
some really good reviews and feedback, maybe even our friends today, once you read Rebecca's book and write in and tell us, and we'll cover that in our next
I love
episode.
it. I
Yeah.
love it.
Until next time, friends.